I never imagined that I would tell this tale. My life took an unexpected turn. My name is Emma, and I am 40 years old. I've been parenting my son Liam alone for a long time. He is currently 22 years old, and we have always been close supporting one another through the highs and lows of life when something unexpected happened one night. Liam looked really tired and said he didn't feel well. He had been working hard and studying a lot, and he looked worn out. I told him he could lie down on my bed for a while. If he wanted to rest, it was a cold night and our house takes a while to warm up, so I covered him with a heavy blanket. At first it seemed like a mother helping her son, but as I lay next to him, I felt him move closer. I assumed he was trying to get warm, and I didn't give it much thought. But then he wrapped his arms around me, gently drawing me close. Just like he used to do when he was younger, I was a little surprised. But he let it be the probably just needed comfort. I could feel his warmth next to him. His steady breathing, Elle's breathing, slowed down as we lay there, as if he were falling asleep. The room was so quiet that I could hear my own heartbeat, which was strange but comforting. I didn't move to avoid disturbing him, telling myself it was just a mother comforting her son, however. After a while, he moved again, moving closer to me under the blanket. I felt his arm wrap around me a little tighter, and I froze for a moment, not knowing what to think. Part of me wanted to say something to get out, but another part of me remained motionless. There was a tension in the air that I couldn't ignore, and I wasn't sure why I felt this way. Suddenly I was astonished by something that occurred. Unexpectedly, I felt something hard beneath the blanket, and my heart began to rush. I made an effort to remain composed and convinced myself that he was only my kid. Perhaps he wasn't even aware of it. I tried to ignore the emotions that were beginning to well up inside of me as I lay there. I convinced myself it was only a brief, weird, uncomfortable time that would end. But as the minutes passed, I became aware that things had changed, and I was unsure of how to respond. Liam remained beside me, breathing steadily, but I could sense our growing intimacy. I tried to relieve the tension by saying something humorous, but I couldn't find the right words. I wasn't sure what I was feeling at the time, and I felt stuck. Then Liam moved a little and raised his head to gaze at me. I had never seen the gentleness in his eyes before, and it simultaneously gave me a sense of security and unease. Although he remained silent, his eyes appeared to be asking me whether I was all right. I attempted to grin in the hopes that it would lessen the weird sensation, but it simply deepened the sense of quiet. Liam's hand remained solid and warm on my arm. His fingertips moved softly, almost unconsciously, and I could feel it every touch seemed to ignite something within me that I couldn't ignore. Despite the fact that it was such a minor thing, I tried not to show him that my heart was pounding by maintaining a regular breathing pattern. I just lay there, feeling totally engrossed in the weird connection between us, unsure of what to say or do, even though I convinced myself that this was only a mother consoling her kid. My mind kept racing with inappropriate ideas when we were alone beneath the blanket. However, I was unable to ignore them, even though he was my kid. I felt a closer connection with him while we were lying there that I couldn't explain. I experienced a sudden sensation that stopped me cold, a mix of bewilderment and warmth. Elle didn't appear to notice my struggle. He simply remained by my side, his hand moving gently and consolingly, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. His breathing was calm, and his eyes were closed. Ed once more leading me to believe that he was going to sleep, but then his hand moved slowly up my arm, sending a shiver down my spine. Before he opened his eyes and looked directly into mine, I mumbled his name, barely able to get the words out because I wanted to stop this drawaway and create some distance, but I couldn't move. For some reason, there was a question in his eyes, as if he was asking if this was acceptable, if I felt the same weird pull. That he did. My heart thumped and my mind raced, but I couldn't bring myself to pull away, because I felt torn between my role Ash's mother and the strange feelings that had surfaced the tension between us was too great, like a quiet storm building in them. Silence that neither of us spoke, but the air was full of unspoken words that we both felt but couldn't bring ourselves to say. As he leaned closer, I felt my breath catch, and every thought I'd faded away, leaving only that moment. Between us now, Liam's hand was softly resting on my shoulder, his fingers trailing as though he was hesitant too. For a minute the world seemed far away, and all I could think about was how warm he was and how I could practically hear his heartbeat. I tried to calm myself by closing my eyes and telling myself to pull back to break the closeness that felt so overwhelming and confusing, but then I felt his hand gently move up, brushing a strand of hair away from my face. It was such a simple, caring gesture, but it made my heart hurt in ways I could understand. When I opened my eyes, I saw that he was staring at me with such tenderness and trust, and I could see every little detail, including the tiny freckles, the gentle curve of his mouth, and the way his eyes searched mine. I could tell that he was just as lost in this moment as I was, and remained, like that, suspended in the silence as if time had stopped. I felt drawn to him, this person I had raised, but he felt like someone completely new to me in that moment. Just as I thought, we'd stay frozen in that silence forever. I took a deep breath to try to calm the rush of emotions inside me. Hoping he hadn't noticed. "Sorry, Mom," he said softly, his voice full of uncertainty. "I didn't mean to make things strange." Liam avoided my gaze, and I could see a hint of color on his cheeks as if he was struggling with the same confusion he pulled back slightly. Breaking the trance, he looked away, almost embarrassed, and let out a shaky laugh, rubbing the back of his neck. This brought me back to reality. For a moment, letting me realize just how close we'd been, felt uncomfortable around my own son for the first time in a long time, and was at a loss for words. I put my hand on his shoulder and smiled, slightly in the hopes that it would help to calm him down. "It's okay." Liam had nodded, and I saw a flash of relief in his eyes as I said, it's just been us for so long, and we're both probably just feeling a little lost." Just as the tension was beginning to ease, the doorbell rang, and the sudden noise brought us both back to the present, breaking whatever spell had been between us. I hastily got up, feeling my heart still racing, and went to the door, grateful for the interruption, only to find our neighbor Mark standing there. When I opened it, I recognized that it still had that weird vibe from the time with Liam, because Mark, who had always been amiable and someone I could rely on when I needed help, smiled but kept his eyes on me a little longer than normal. "Hey, Emma." I attempted to gather myself in the hopes that he wouldn't notice anything out of the ordinary. His voice was pleasant as he spoke to check whether you needed anything. "I decided to stop by. I can assist you with any heating problems you may be experiencing, since I am aware that it has been a little cooler lately." I had an odd rush of relief, and I briefly allowed myself to unwind. "Oh, Ismiled," and said, "Thank you, Mark. In fact, it does get a little cold in the house. It would be much appreciated." As Mark entered, I sensed Liam observing us from the hallway, his countenance inscrutable as Mark moved around checking the heater. He asked me how things were at home. We struck up a conversation, but I kept looking at Liam, who remained silent and watched us both with an odd intensity. I looked back at him, and for a moment I saw something in his eyes, a flicker of something like jealous, though he tried to hide it quickly. This startled me and left me wondering if he was feeling more than he wanted to admit. I sensed his uneasiness, which created a new level of tension in the room. I was torn between trying to make things easier with Mark and knowing that Liam was there, his eyes never leaving us after a few minutes. Mark smiled warmly as he turned to face me. "Okay. Emma, everything appears to be in order here. If you need further assistance, just give us a call." I thanked him, and as he walked away, I could feel the tension between Liam and myself increasing. He was standing there, with his arms crossed, and a stern expression on his face as I turned to lock the door. "Liam, are you all right?" Inquired in an attempt to learn more about his thoughts. He looked aside, shrugged, and said quietly, "Yes, I'm all right. Simply didn't think Mark would stop by." I wanted to talk to him to find out what was going on between us, but before I could say anything more, he left me and went to his room without saying anything else. The door quietly closed behind him, and I stood there feeling a weird mix of relief, confusion, and a lingering sense that something wasn't quite done. I stood there looking at Liam's closed door with an inexplicable pain in my head, my thoughts racing with everything that had just transpired, our intimacy, the way his eyeshad lingered while Mark was present, and the odd unsaid tension that seemed to be waiting to re-emerging bubble. I walked Tomy's room and sat on the bed's edge, repeating all of my knowledge. I wasn't sure how to deal with it, but I couldn't ignore it. Indefinitely, I heard a gentle knock on my door at that very moment. I wondered whether Liam had returned, and my heart leaped a bit. I said, attempting to sound steady, "Come in," with an inscrutable look. Liam opened the door and entered. He approached and took a seat next to me while glancing down at his hands for a minute. The air seemed thick with everything as we sat there. In quiet at last, he said in a barely audible whisper. He trailed off, seemingly struggling with his words, "And I apologize if I made things awkward before I have no idea what's going on." I put my hand on his and gave it a little squeeze. Since it's been just the two of us for so long, things might occasionally become complicated, but it's all right. Liam, perhaps we're both feeling a bit disoriented right now. He nodded while continuing to stare at his hands before turning to face me. His eyes were loaded with a range of feelings for a moment. I considered reaching out to give him a hug to reassure him that everything would be okay, but I wasn't sure if that was what he needed or if it would make things even more complicated. So I just sat there and let the silence speak for us. Both, he said it softly, almost as if he was afraid to admit it. I didn't know how to respond, and I felt my own heartache with that same confused confusion. Perhaps we could simply stand back and consider everything. "Liam," I said gently, "it's okay to feel close, but it's also okay to need space to figure things out." He nodded slowly, but then in a surprising move, he leaned his head on my shoulder, just like he used to when he was younger. It felt comforting, familiar, yet with that strange edge to it that I couldn't ignore. I felt my heart soften, and I put my arm around him, pulling him close in a way that felt safe. Even though I knew the questions between us weren't fully answered for the first time. In a while, I felt that maybe we didn't have to have all the answers. Right now, we could take it one step at a time, figuring things out together, even if it was complicated. And as we sat there just holding on to each other, I felt a sense of calm, a quiet hope that no matter what, we would find our way through this together. We stayed like that, sitting quietly together as if all the confusion between us could disappear just by being close, but deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. The warmth between us was comforting, yet unsettling, like a feeling just beneath the surface that neither of us could ignore. After a while, Liam lifted his head and looked at me, his face serious. "Mom." His remarks lingered in the air like a question he dared not ask aloud, and I'm not sure how to handle these sentiments without making things more difficult for us. My mind was racing as it tried to think of the right thing to say, but before I could finish, there was another knock on the door. We both jumped, startled, and looked at each other, caught off guard. The knock was firm, almost urgent, as if the person on the other side knew something was happening in a panic. I jumped up and went to the door when I opened it.